The cold came up through the concrete before the sun did. Megan Parker pulled her thin blanket tighter and listened to trucks rumble along the Dan Ryan Expressway. The air smelled like wet pavement and old coffee. Her stomach hurt, but not in a new way. Hunger had become part of the morning. She sat up beneath the overpass on Chicago's South Side and rubbed her hands together. They were stiff from the cold. Her backpack sat beside her. Everything she still owned fit inside it. A few shirts, a notebook, a phone with a cracked screen, a charger that only worked if the cord stayed bent a certain way. She reached for the notebook first. That never changed. No matter how bad things got, she wrote one page every morning. Some mornings she wrote plans. Some mornings she wrote fears. Some mornings she just wrote enough words to prove she was still here. The page that morning said only 3 things. Stay clean. Keep trying. Don't quit today. She stared at the words. She had no idea how important they would become. Megan was 38 years old. Most people who passed her never guessed that. Homelessness aged people fast. The dark circles under her eyes added years. The stress added more. But there was still something in her face that hadn't broken. Hope lived there. Small, stubborn, refusing to leave. She packed her blanket and stood. The city was waking up. Cars moved through the gray morning. A train rattled overhead. Somewhere nearby, someone was frying bacon. The smell made her stomach twist. She started walking. Every day followed a routine. Routine kept her sane. First came the church on 31st Street. They served coffee and sometimes donuts. Then came the library. Then job applications. Then whatever else the day allowed. The church basement smelled like old carpet and fresh coffee. A volunteer named Ruth smiled when Megan walked in. "Morning, Megan." "Morning. You sleep okay?" Megan laughed softly. "Depends how low the standards are." Ruth smiled. "Fair enough." She handed Megan a cup. The warmth felt good against her hands. Small things mattered now. A hot drink, a dry place, someone remembering her name. Those things could carry a person farther than people realized. Megan sat alone near a folding table. Across the room, several men talked quietly. A young woman held a sleeping baby. An older veteran stared into his coffee. Nobody looked at anyone too long. People here understood dignity. They knew shame already did enough damage. Ruth sat beside her. "You hear anything back yet?" Megan shook her head. "No." "Keep trying." "I am. I know." Megan looked down. The truth was harder. She had been trying for almost a year. Almost every application ended the same way. No call, no email, nothing. The gaps on her resume scared employers away. Nobody asked why. Nobody stayed long enough to hear the answer. By 8 o'clock, she headed toward the library. The building opened at 9.
A small line already waited outside. Several people carried backpacks. A few carried their whole lives. Libraries became different things for different people. For some people, they held books. For others, they held survival. Inside, the heat felt wonderful. Megan found her usual computer. She logged in. Her email showed nothing new. Again. She opened job websites. Again. Receptionist, data entry, office assistant, customer service. Anything. She applied everywhere. Megan had always been good with organization, good with numbers, good with details. Before everything fell apart, she worked as an office manager for a small manufacturing company for 13 years. She showed up early, stayed late, never caused trouble. She thought loyalty meant safety. She learned otherwise. The memories still hurt. It always started with a Tuesday, a normal Tuesday, 3 years earlier. The company owner gathered everyone in the warehouse. People joked while they waited. Nobody seemed worried. Megan stood beside her friend Sarah. "You think we're getting raises?" Sarah asked. Megan laughed. "Maybe free donuts." Then the owner walked in. His face looked wrong. Everybody went quiet. The next 15 minutes changed dozens of lives. The company had lost major contracts. Money was gone. Operations were shutting down. Positions were eliminated immediately. Security escorted people to collect belongings. Just like that, years disappeared. Paychecks disappeared. Health insurance disappeared. The future disappeared. Megan remembered carrying a cardboard box through the parking lot. She remembered the wind. She remembered staring at her car. Most of all, she remembered disbelief. People always think disaster arrives loudly. Sometimes it arrives in a calm voice, holding paperwork. At first, she thought she'd recover quickly. She had savings. Not much. Enough. Or so she believed. The first few months weren't terrible. She applied everywhere, interviewed often, waited. Nothing happened. Then her mother got sick. Very sick. Everything changed again. Her mother lived alone in a small apartment. The hospital visits became constant. Medical bills stacked up. Insurance covered some things. Not enough. Never enough. Megan drained savings, then credit cards, then personal loans, then anything available. She told herself it was temporary. People tell themselves that a lot. Temporary can become permanent before anyone notices. Her mother died 6 months later. The funeral happened on a rainy afternoon. The sky looked tired. Megan felt worse. Afterward, she sat alone in her car for nearly an hour. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The sadness had become too heavy for tears. The bills kept arriving. The job offers never did. Debt grew. Interest grew. Fear grew faster. One evening, she opened her mailbox. An eviction notice waited inside. She stared at it, read it twice, then 3 times. Her apartment felt different after that. Every wall seemed temporary.
Every piece of furniture looked borrowed. She worked part-time at a grocery store by then. Minimum wage. Not enough hours, not enough anything. She fought as long as possible. Then the day came. The landlord changed the locks. Her storage unit got most of her belongings. Her backpack got the rest. The sidewalk got her. That was 11 months ago. A man nearby sneezed loudly. The library computer pulled her back to the present. She blinked. Another application finished. Another hope sent into silence. She stood and stretched. Outside, snow flurries drifted through the air. Chicago winters showed no mercy. By afternoon, she headed toward a shelter. Not every night, only when beds were available. Some nights she slept outside. Some nights she found a couch. Some nights she rode trains until morning. The shelter worker at check-in looked up. "Hey, Megan." His name was Carlos. He always seemed tired, still kind. "Any openings?" she asked. "Got lucky today." "Good. Bed 17. Thanks." Carlos handed her a sheet. "You got mail." Megan frowned. "Mail?" Someone dropped it off. She took the envelope. No return address. No clue. Just her name. She stared at it. The paper felt heavier than it should. "What is it?" Carlos asked. "No idea." "You opening it?" "Later." He nodded. Sometimes people needed time. Megan tucked it into her backpack. She would think about that envelope all night. The shelter smelled like laundry soap and old shoes.
Rows of beds stretched across the room. People moved quietly. Some read books. Others stared into space. A television played in the corner. Nobody watched. Megan sat on her bed. Across from her sat a woman named Denise. They had become friends, or as close to friends as people often got here. "Cold out?" Denise asked. "Brutal," Denise noted. "Supposed to get worse." "Of course it is." They laughed. The kind of laugh tired people shared. A small moment, still valuable. Later that evening, they walked to a nearby fast food place. Megan counted coins before ordering. A small burger, small fries, water. The meal disappeared in minutes. At a table near the window, Denise looked at her. "You ever think about leaving Chicago?" "Every day." "Why don't you?" Megan stared outside. Snow drifted beneath streetlights. "My mom's buried here." Denise nodded. That answer made sense. Some roots stayed planted, even after everything else got ripped away. They returned to the shelter. People settled in for the night. Lights dimmed, voices faded. Megan pulled out her notebook. She wrote another page. Today's applications, today's expenses, today's worries. Then she paused. A memory surfaced. One she hadn't thought about in months. When she was 12 years old, her father used to repair vending machines. Old machines, broken machines nobody else wanted. She often sat beside him, watching, learning, listening. He always said the same thing.
Everything works eventually if you understand what's wrong. Back then, she thought he meant machines. Years later, she wondered if he meant people. Her father died when she was 23, a heart attack, sudden, no warning. But some lessons stayed, even now, especially now. The next morning brought more snow. The city looked washed and gray. Megan left early. She had an interview. Not a great one, still an interview. That mattered. The office sat downtown. Tall glass building, clean lobby, warm air. She adjusted her thrift store jacket and checked her reflection. The woman staring back looked exhausted. She forced a smile anyway. The receptionist handed her paperwork. Have a seat. She waited 20 minutes, then 30. Finally, a manager appeared. The interview lasted 11 minutes, she counted. He glanced at her resume, asked basic questions, smiled politely. Then his eyes found the employment gap. Everything changed. It always did. We'll be in touch. Those 4 words had become a funeral song. She thanked him anyway. Outside, the cold hit harder. She walked several blocks before stopping. A bus roared past. People hurried along sidewalks. Nobody noticed the tears. That helped. Some pain preferred privacy. She found herself outside a convenience store. A vending machine stood beside the entrance. Old, damaged, half the buttons missing. Something about it caught her attention. She stared longer than necessary. The machine reminded her of her father.
Broken on the outside, still capable of working. Maybe. A store employee stepped outside. Thing hasn't worked in years. Megan smiled. Looks like it. You fix machines? My dad did. City should haul that thing away. The employee went back inside. Megan remained there, watching, thinking. A strange idea flickered through her mind. Tiny, barely alive. She almost ignored it. Almost. That night, she opened the mystery envelope. Inside sat a handwritten note. Only 3 sentences. Ruth from the church had written it. Megan, I know someone looking for help with old vending machines. Thought of you. Call this number. Don't talk yourself out of it. A phone number sat below. Nothing else. Megan read it twice. Then again. Her heart beat faster. It made no sense. She knew almost nothing about vending machines. Not really. Only memories. Only observations. Only things learned years ago beside her father. Still, the note stayed in her hand long after lights out. Around her, people slept. Some snored softly. Some tossed restlessly. Outside, wind pushed against the shelter walls. Megan stared into darkness. For months, every door had stayed shut. Every path had ended. Every effort had collapsed. Yet something felt different. Not certain. Not safe. Just different. Like hearing a distant train before seeing it. Like feeling spring somewhere beneath a brutal winter. The number remained folded in her pocket. She would make the call tomorrow.
She had no idea what waited on the other end. And for the first time in a long while, that scared her less than staying exactly where she was. Megan barely slept. The folded note stayed under her pillow all night. Every time she woke up, she touched it, just to make sure it was real. Morning arrived cold and gray again. The shelter slowly came alive. People packed bags, beds emptied, coffee brewed somewhere nearby. Megan stepped outside and stared at the number one more time. Then she called. The phone rang twice. A man's voice answered. Hello. Hi, my name is Megan Parker. Okay. Ruth from Grace Community Church gave me your number. A pause followed. Then his tone softened. Ah, Ruth. My understanding is you're looking for help. Another pause. You know vending machines? Not exactly. The silence stretched. Megan almost hung up. Then she told the truth. My dad repaired them. The man laughed. That's not exactly a certification. No, but it's true. More silence. Finally, he spoke again. Can you be at 58th and Halsted by 10? Today? Today. I can. Good. The line disconnected. That was it? No interview, no details, nothing. Megan stood there blinking. Then she started walking. The warehouse sat between an auto repair shop and a vacant lot. The sign above the door read Lakeshore Vending Services. The building looked tired. Paint peeled from the walls. One garage door hung crooked. A pickup truck sat outside. Megan walked in.
The smell hit first. Oil, metal, dust, coffee, old machinery. A tall man in his 60s approached. Gray beard, work boots, strong hands. You Megan? Yes. I'm Frank. They shook hands. His grip felt like sandpaper. Frank pointed toward a row of broken vending machines. Know what those are? Broken. He smiled. Good start. Megan smiled back. For the first time in months, she felt normal. Not homeless, not desperate. Just a person talking to another person. Frank walked between machines. I buy old units nobody wants. Why? Because nobody wants them. Megan laughed.
He nodded. Then I fixed them. People buy them? Every day. They stopped beside a machine covered in dust. Frank opened the front panel. Wires filled the inside. Shelves, motors, sensors. A world hidden behind metal. Megan stared. Memories flooded back. Her father leaning over machines. His toolbox. The smell of grease. Saturday mornings spent beside him. Things she thought she forgot returned suddenly. Frank noticed. You recognize some of this. A little. Good. He handed her a screwdriver. Let's see what you've got. The next 3 hours passed quickly. Frank tested her. Not with questions, with problems. Simple ones. Small repairs, basic troubleshooting. Megan made mistakes, lots of them, but she learned fast, very fast. By lunch, Frank sat on a workbench eating a sandwich. He pointed toward a machine. You figured out that coin jam quicker than my nephew. Megan smiled. Luck.
No, he shook his head. Pattern recognition. The words stayed with her. Pattern recognition. That was what she always did, even at her office job. Finding mistakes, finding missing details, finding problems others missed. Frank stood. You need work? Megan laughed. The question sounded ridiculous. Very much. Part-time at first. Her heart jumped. You serious? 3 days a week. Megan stared. The warehouse suddenly seemed brighter. I'd take it. I know. When do I start? Frank smiled. You already did. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Nearly a year of rejection. Nearly a year of silence. Nearly a year of hearing no. Then one simple yes. She walked out that afternoon with grease on her hands and hope in her chest. The paycheck wouldn't come for 2 weeks, but something important had changed. She had somewhere to be tomorrow. That mattered, a lot. At the shelter that evening, Denise noticed immediately. You look different. I got work. Denise nearly dropped her cup. You serious? Part-time. Still. She hugged Megan, hard. Neither woman said much after that. Sometimes joy needed space too. That night, Megan wrote 3 pages in her notebook, the longest entry in months. She wrote until her hand cramped, then she fell asleep smiling. The next weeks weren't easy. The job paid little, very little. She still stayed in shelters, still counted every dollar, still worried constantly. But work gave structure. Structure gave dignity. And dignity gave strength. Frank proved difficult sometimes. Old school, stubborn, demanding, but fair, always fair. When the stakes happened, he corrected them. When progress happened, he noticed. One afternoon, he watched Megan repair a snack machine. You ever think about buying your own? She laughed. With what money? I'm serious. Frank. He shrugged, just asking. The idea sounded impossible, like asking someone living in a tent about buying a yacht. Megan ignored it. At least she tried to. A month later, she received her first full paycheck. The amount wasn't impressive. Not to most people. To Megan, it felt enormous. She held the check for nearly 5 minutes, just staring. A few tears escaped. Nobody noticed, thankfully. The first thing she bought wasn't food, wasn't clothes, wasn't even a better phone. She bought a small frame. Inside, she placed the paycheck stub. A reminder, proof, evidence that her life hadn't ended. She stored it carefully in her backpack. Months passed. Winter slowly loosened its grip. Snow melted. Sidewalks reappeared. Trees showed hints of green. Megan kept working, kept learning, kept showing up early. One afternoon, Frank called her into his office. The room looked exactly how she imagined. Old desk, stacks of paperwork, coffee stains everywhere. Sit down. Megan sat. Frank slid a folder across the desk. What's this? Look. She opened it. Financial records, repair invoices, purchase costs, sales reports.
Her office manager instincts activated instantly. Numbers began organizing themselves inside her mind. Frank watched quietly. After 10 minutes, she looked up. You're losing money. Yep. These machines aren't the problem. Nope. She pointed at invoices. Inventory tracking is. Frank smiled. Took you 10 minutes. She kept flipping pages. You've got duplicate orders. Yep. Wasted deliveries. Yep. Missing records. Yep. She leaned back. You need software. Frank laughed. You sound expensive. I sound right. For the next week, Megan reorganized everything. Spreadsheets,
records, inventory systems, scheduling. The same skills that once managed an office now managed a repair business. Within 2 months, profits improved. Not dramatically. Enough. Frank noticed. Very much. One Friday afternoon, he handed her an envelope. Inside sat a bonus. Megan stared. I can't take this. Sure you can. It's too much. No. Frank shook his head. It's not enough. She looked down. Emotion tightened her throat. Nobody had valued her skills in years. Nobody. Frank noticed her silence. You know something? What? I hired you for machines. He pointed toward the office. Turns out that wasn't the smartest thing you brought. Megan smiled. The bonus changed things. Not overnight, but noticeably. Soon she rented a room in a shared house. Small bedroom, tiny closet, old mattress. It felt like a mansion.
The first night there, she locked the door behind her, then sat quietly on the bed. No shelter noise, no strangers, no fear someone would steal her backpack. Just silence. Safe silence. She cried for almost 20 minutes. Then she slept. Really slept. For the first time in nearly a year. That was the last night she slept in a shelter. The months that followed became a climb. Slow, steady, real. Megan saved every dollar possible. She repaired machines by day, managed records by afternoon, studied online business videos at night, hours and hours of YouTube tutorials. Borrowed knowledge became fuel. One evening, Frank walked into the warehouse carrying paperwork. I got something. What? He dropped a folder on the workbench. Inside sat photos. 6 broken vending machines. Terrible condition. Graffiti everywhere, rust, damage, neglect. They're cheap? There's a reason. Frank nodded. Yep. She studied the pictures. Something sparked. The same feeling she'd had beside that broken machine months ago. The feeling returned, stronger now. What are you thinking? Frank asked. Megan looked up. What if I buy one? Frank smiled slowly. There she is. What? The person I've been waiting for. She laughed nervously. I barely have savings. You have enough for one. One machine. Not 6, not a business. Just one. Still, the idea refused to leave. For days she thought about it. Calculated costs, risks, repairs. Possible profits. Possible failure. Mostly failure. Failure always felt easier to imagine. Finally, she bought one. The ugliest machine in the entire group. Everybody else avoided it. That made it cheaper. Frank helped transport it. The machine sat inside a corner of the warehouse, looking hopeless, looking dead, looking familiar. Megan worked on it after hours, every evening, every weekend, every spare moment. The repairs took weeks. She cleaned every surface, replaced motors, fixed wiring, painted panels, tested systems, failed repeatedly, then tried again. One night she sat alone staring at it, exhausted, frustrated, ready to quit. Her savings were nearly gone. The machine still wouldn't work properly. She kicked the side, immediately regretted it. Then she laughed, a deep, tired laugh, the kind that arrives when everything feels ridiculous. Frank appeared from behind another machine. Giving up? No. Good. He handed her a soda. They sat quietly. You know why I called Ruth about you? Frank asked. Megan shook her head. No. I saw you months before we met. What? Broken vending machine outside Martin's Market. Megan froze. The machine. The one she stopped beside. The one she stared at. Frank nodded. I was inside. You saw me? Yup. You never said anything. I wanted to see what happened. She laughed. That's weird. A little. They smiled. Frank took a sip. You looked at that machine differently. What does that mean? You looked like somebody trying to understand it. He pointed toward her project. Most people see junk. Megan looked at the machine. Paint drying, panels repaired, life returning. Frank stood. Don't quit. Then he walked away. Megan stayed another 4 hours. At 2 a.m, she finally found the problem. A damaged control board. Small. Hidden. Easy to miss. The machine came alive moments later.
Lights flashed, motors turned. The familiar hum filled the warehouse. Megan stared in disbelief. Then she laughed, then cried, then laughed again. Her first machine worked. Really worked. A week later, she found a location willing to rent space, a laundromat in West Englewood. Nothing fancy. Still a start. She stocked snacks herself, loaded drinks herself, cleaned everything herself. The machine earned $43 during its first week. $43. Most people would laugh. Megan almost framed the report. The second week earned $68. The third earned $92. Slowly, very slowly, something was growing. Then a problem appeared. A big one. The laundromat owner called one morning. His voice sounded worried. "Megan, what's wrong? We need to talk." Her stomach dropped instantly. What happened? It's not the machine. Then what? A long pause followed, the kind nobody likes hearing. When he finally spoke, everything felt uncertain again. The laundromat owner sat across from Megan later that afternoon. His name was Earl. He looked nervous. That scared her immediately. People usually looked nervous before delivering bad news. The smell of detergent drifted through the building. Washing machines hummed around them. Customers moved in and out carrying baskets. Earl rubbed his hands together. "Megan, I got an offer." Her stomach tightened. "What kind of offer?" "A bigger vending company." She nodded slowly. "They want all my machine space." The words hit hard, very hard. Her machine was her only machine, her entire business, her future, everything. "Okay," she said quietly. Earl looked uncomfortable. "They're offering more money." Megan looked down. She couldn't blame him. Business was business. That truth didn't hurt any less. "I understand." Earl leaned forward. "Let me finish." She looked up. "They offered more money." He pointed toward her machine. "But customers like yours better." Megan blinked. "What?" "You keep it clean," he shrugged. "You fix problems fast." He smiled. "You actually answer your phone." Relief rushed through her chest. So I'm keeping yours." For a second, she couldn't speak. Then she laughed, a shaky laugh, the kind that comes after fear. Earl smiled. "Thought you'd want to know." She thanked him 3 times before leaving. Outside, warm spring air filled the streets. People walked past carrying groceries. Kids rode bikes. For the first time in years, Megan felt something unfamiliar. Momentum. Not luck, not rescue. Momentum. A few months later, she bought a second machine. Then a third. The process stayed slow. Every dollar mattered. Every repair mattered. Every location mattered. She still worked for Frank, still showed up every morning, still learned everything she could. But nights belonged to her business. The machines slowly multiplied across Chicago. A laundromat, a tire shop, a small community college building, a medical clinic waiting room, then another, then another. Nothing exploded overnight. There were no miracle moments, no investors showing up with giant checks, no television crews, no viral videos. Just long days, careful choices, and relentless consistency, the kind most people never see. One afternoon, a machine stopped working inside a community center. Megan drove across town immediately. Rain pounded the windshield. Traffic crawled. The repair took less than 15 minutes. As she packed her tools, a teenage boy watched nearby. "You own these?" "Yeah." His eyes widened. "All of them?" "Not all. Still." The boy looked impressed. Then he pointed toward her toolbox. "How'd you learn?" Megan smiled. "One broken machine at a time." The boy nodded, like he would remember that sentence. Years later, she hoped he did, because it was true about more than machines. By the second year, Megan finally moved into her own apartment, a small one-bedroom near Bridgeport. Nothing fancy. Old floors, tiny kitchen, second-floor walk-up. She loved every inch of it. The first night, she carried in 2 folding chairs, 1 lamp, a mattress. That was almost everything she owned. Still, it felt like victory. She stood in the empty living room and looked around. The silence felt different now. Not lonely, peaceful. Her phone rang. Denise. "How's the palace?" Denise asked. Megan laughed. "You should see this place. You sound happy." There was a pause. Then Megan answered honestly. "I am." Denise grew quiet. "I knew you'd make it." Megan sat on the floor. "No, you didn't." "Okay," Denise laughed. "I hoped." They both laughed. That felt more honest. Because hope was never certainty. Hope was choosing to keep walking without guarantees. Megan understood that better than most people. A few months later, she helped Denise find work, then helped her find housing. The day Denise got her apartment keys, both women cried. Neither pretended otherwise. Some victories deserved tears. Years passed. The business kept growing. Not widely, steadily. That was enough. Megan eventually left Frank's company. The conversation felt emotional. Frank sat behind his cluttered desk. "You staying?" "You know I'm not." "Yeah." They smiled. He looked proud, like a father trying not to show it. "You built something good." "You helped." He waved that away. "No." He pointed toward her. "You helped." Megan looked around the office. The old desk, the stained coffee mug, the stacks of paperwork. Everything felt familiar. Frank stood and extended his hand. She ignored it and hugged him instead. He laughed, then hugged her back. "Don't become one of those rich, weird people," Megan laughed. "I'll do my best," he grinned. "Good." Then she walked out. A chapter ended. Another began. 5 years after sleeping beneath that overpass, Megan employed 12 people. Most came from backgrounds similar to hers. Some had lived in shelters, some had lost homes, some had records that scared employers away. Some simply needed somebody willing to give them a chance. Megan understood that feeling. She never forgot it. One summer afternoon, she stood inside a renovated warehouse, her warehouse. Rows of vending machines lined the floor, some repaired, some waiting, some ready for installation. Employees moved around laughing and working. The place buzzed with life. An investor toured the facility, a real investor, the kind who wore expensive shoes, the kind who used business words Megan once found intimidating. He looked impressed, very impressed. "You've built something remarkable." Megan smiled politely. The investor continued. "We'd like to discuss expansion." She nodded. Years earlier, those words would have felt impossible. Now they felt earned. That difference mattered. Investors weren't the beginning. They were the result. The real beginning happened beneath an overpass, with a notebook, a backpack, and a decision not to quit. The investor kept talking. Numbers, growth plans, markets, opportunities. Megan listened carefully. Then her eyes drifted toward the warehouse entrance. A vending machine sat near the door. Old, worn, outdated. The first machine she ever bought. The ugly one nobody wanted. She kept it there intentionally. A reminder, a teacher, a friend. People often asked why she never replaced it. She always gave the same answer. Because that's where everything started. The investor eventually left. The warehouse quieted. Evening sunlight streamed through high windows. Golden light covered the floor. Megan stood alone for a moment, just looking around. She remembered cold sidewalks. She remembered hunger. She remembered shelters. She remembered rejection. She remembered all of it. Not with bitterness, with gratitude. Those years hurt, but they also shaped her. The pain became part of the foundation. Without it, she wouldn't recognize what she had now. Several months later, she visited her mother's grave. Fresh flowers rested beside the stone. A warm breeze moved through nearby trees. The cemetery felt peaceful. Megan sat quietly. She didn't say much. She never did. But she stayed a while. Long enough to feel connected. Long enough to remember. Long enough to be thankful. Before leaving, she smiled. "I made it, Mom." The words felt simple. Perfectly simple. On the drive home, she passed the old overpass. Traffic slowed. The same concrete, the same highway, the same city. For a moment, she pulled over nearby, then stepped out. Cars roared overhead. The sound hadn't changed. The smell of pavement hadn't changed. The wind hadn't changed. But she had. Completely. She stood there for several minutes, remembering. A younger version of herself once slept there. Scared, hungry, ashamed. Certain life was closing around her. If she could have spoken to that woman now, she would have said very little. Just enough. Maybe this. Keep going. Tomorrow isn't finished yet. Then she climbed back into her car and drove home. Years later, after another long workday, Megan stood before her bathroom mirror. The apartment was larger now. The business was larger now. Life was larger now. But that wasn't what mattered. She looked at her reflection carefully. The woman staring back looked familiar. Not because of success, not because of money, not because of recognition, because she finally recognized herself again. The person who had disappeared during those hard years had returned. Not unchanged, not untouched, just whole. That realization brought tears to her eyes. Happy tears. Quiet tears. The kind nobody else needed to see. She smiled at her reflection, and her reflection smiled back. For the first time in a very long time, she believed it. The next morning, she arrived at work before everyone else. Old habits stayed. Coffee in hand, notebook under her arm. She sat beside that first vending machine. The old one. The ugly one. The machine nobody wanted. Sunlight slipped through the warehouse windows. Dust floated in the air. The building felt calm. Megan opened her notebook. The same habit she kept through homelessness.
The same habit she kept through recovery. The same habit she kept through success. She wrote one page, then another. Finally, she stopped. At the bottom, she wrote 4 words. Don't quit today. Then she smiled. Some promises never get old. The truth is that most people carry something heavy. Maybe it isn't homelessness. Maybe it isn't money. Maybe nobody else can even see it. But everyone knows what it feels like to doubt themselves. Everyone knows what it feels like to feel left behind. Everyone knows what it feels like to stare at a problem and wonder if they have enough left to keep going. What matters isn't avoiding those moments. What matters is what happens next. One small choice can change a life. One phone call, one application, one conversation, one more day. Most breakthroughs don't arrive like lightning. They arrive quietly, built from hundreds of invisible decisions. The world often celebrates success after it becomes visible, but the real victory happens earlier. It happens when someone chooses not to surrender, even when nobody is watching, even when nothing seems to be working, even when hope feels small. Because hope doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to stay alive. And maybe that's the thing worth remembering. Not that some people succeed, but that human beings can survive more than they think. They can rebuild more than they think. They can become more than they think. What part of your life might change if you gave yourself one more chance tomorrow?
Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is refuse to quit on themselves. The story is now complete.